So today I'm changing out my water pump on my 1967 Volvo Amazon. Here on the left is the pump that has come out of the car. It's an A1 Cardone, that's the brand. On the right we have a GMB pump made in Japan. The problem I'm having at the moment is that the car's overheating when the temperature gets warmer. It's fine during the winter months when it's, sub 40 degrees, and then once it warms up past 40, I'm noticing my temperature gauge climb, especially when I'm putting the car under power or when I'm just idling. So at idle, I'm guessing I'm not getting sufficient circulation on my pump, and that's why I suspected something was up with the impellers. Well, here's the impellers on the Cardone pump, and here are the impellers on the GMB pump. You can see a really big difference there. This is a simple flat style. It's like a disc, and they just, if I can get the lighting good in there, they don't really inspire a lot of confidence. I should also say that this is the cheapest water pump on the market that I found for the car back in 2013, I think, when I first got it. So I could also pull off a water pump off of my spare engine and compare the Volvo OEM, but I'll just tell you all right now that the Volvo OEM impellers do look just like this, the vanes. So there's going to be a lot more circulation coming out of this pump. Hopefully that should take care of a lot of the issues. Other things to look at, just general overheating stuff. Thermostat, temperature sensors, if they're giving you an accurate reading, and for my case, airflow to the radiator, because, well, all cases airflow to the radiator, but for me I say that because I have a Honda radiator, which is a lot thicker, but also a little narrower, so there's some space for the air to go around. If I make some ducting there, I can channel it to go through the radiator. Let me show you what I mean. So air can kind of get around here and here through the grill. So what I'm proposing to do is add a duct that would basically line up flush here and flush here on this surface, and the same on the other side. Help channel some of that airflow. Especially with cars that are turbocharged, you really need that airflow through the radiator, through the intercooler, to keep it running at a good temperature. So we're here, sitting at idle, as and here's what's happening. The temperature gauge is really high. This is pretty high too. It doesn't do this at night. It usually stays below 100 degrees, so it doesn't ever register it. But for some reason, it's kind of settled there. The new water pump, I wish everything was perfect and I could just say, hey, new water pump fixed all my cooling problems. But unfortunately, that's not how it works with older cars. Now let's see, if I push the if I rev it up a little bit, you can see like increased circulation is lowering that temperature there. Here's another issue I'm having, and I want your guys' input on this. My carburetor is, was choking out on me a lot. I was having a lot of hesitation. And I read some good tips about adjusting the idle mixture and making sure the throttle plates are closed, etc. And I did all that. They say turn the screw, the idle mixture screw, counterclockwise 1/16 of a turn, and see if the hesitation goes away. And if it doesn't, another 1/16, so on and so forth. So my idle before was sitting right around 13.5 on the AFRs there on my O2 sensor, and I know it's a carbureted car. I shouldn't be trying to compare it to electronic fuel injection that gets perfect stoichiometric most of the time. So the hesitation's gone at a stop. See, I'm gonna push the gas. That's great, but that's only with the first butterfly. So if I get it full throttle, it chokes out on me, and then I gotta baby it. So full throttle again, watch those AFRs. Let me get my focus first. See how it leans out there? I don't like that. That really bothers me. So people were saying, oh, check your accelerator jets, your accelerator pump. So I did, and my accelerator jet pump, whatever, the pump seems to be working just fine because it's giving me, oh, that's getting nosy. Hi, buddy. So the accelerator pump is giving me fuel on the smaller butterfly, on the small throttle. It's a progressive carb, so I assume that when it opens up full throttle, that's when the second jet should kick in. The car was sitting for about a year, you know, in between Portland trips. So give me your guys' input on this, and also let me know if you have measurements. What does your radiator outlet hose run typically? Because this is not acceptable. This is too hot for me. Just compared that it, you know, I don't know. Is it something wrong with the mixture that's causing it to run a little hotter? Because you know, better rich than lean. Lean kind of tends to overheat the cylinder walls. So I'm gonna drive the remaining 2 blocks, and you guys can keep an eye on the AFRs as they develop. I got my off-the-line hesitation to stop, but still, when I'm engine braking, that's when it really starts to come back. Off the gas and back on. It's a lot better now, but another issue is I'm not sure if I've gone the maximum turns out on that air fuel mixture screw. You know, it says you can turn it out 1.5 to 2 turns at most, and if you need to do more than that, then you've got to rejet your carburetor. In an effort to direct more airflow through the radiator, I've made these they're zinc plated sheet metal pieces that are going to fit in there, like that. And then right here where they line up with the radiator, I've got this foam tape, the same that's on the top of my hood there. And I'm going to stick it on, see how that works tonight before I commit to them by painting them. I'll paint them black to match. Anyways, another nice, beautiful sunset. There's a concert tonight. I'm excited. And there's the moon. Stop overheating. Arrgh. Okay, I'll be honest with you guys. It's not like anything went super wrong. But the temperature gauge, both of them, have spiked all the way to hot. I'm blaming my thermostat. Of course, I know that when the system is hot, it's under pressure. So I try to loosening it up a bit, let some of that pressure out, but it goes right on the headers and smokes all this steam. So according to the manuals, these cars take a 74 degrees Celsius thermostat, which is like 165 Fahrenheit. I've got an 82 Celsius in here right now, which comes out to 187 Fahrenheit, something like that. It's not a big difference, but I don't know if it's enough to cause the overheating. Okay, here's a time lapse of my thermostat closing. Okay, until I can get my new lower temperature thermostat, I've decided to destroy this one. Look, when they're all destroyed. Basically, like that. Anyways, some wire cutters took care of that. It's a little more free-flowing. We'll see if the car acts any differently with it until I can put my new thermostat in. It's like this radiator, okay, it's a 3-core radiator. It should be sufficient. I've got the block-off plates. See, they're attached, installed. No problems with the air getting around the radiator. It's pretty much funneled into it, you know, unless I wanted to close up the top or something, but I don't. So what's going on? Is it just because the whole top half of the radiator is not getting air? Or is it this cheap Chinese fan? I mean, it's supposed to, I think it pulls something like 300 cubic feet per minute. Is that even enough? The coolant wasn't boiling, it wasn't bubbling, but it was all the way to the hot on the temperature gauge, which, you know, I mean, these things are pretty old. Can you trust them? Is there an alternative? Because if I remember correctly, that is just one piece attached all the way to the dash gauge. Let's see, my carburetor's running okay, you know, as much as it can. and made a little bit of a mess getting that out before it cooled down because it's getting dark. So if it's not a thermostat, it's not the fan. I guess we'll find out about that, but geez, what could it be? Is it because Hondas have tiny little aluminum engines and then these Volvos are the big cast iron heat-soaking monsters? I want your input on this, guys. Have you had issues with your car overheating? I know I've got a lot of aftermarket parts on here, but what am I missing? By the way, brand new water pump, GMB brand, replacing the original A1 car that was on there last year. One more side note, the outlet sensor there, since I have a reducer, since the hose sizes are a little different, it was reading 160 when the temperature gauge from that sensor was maxed out on the dash. I mean, not maxed out to the point where it's like buried itself past hot, but it just sort of sits at hot. Now, if the car was technically overheating, wouldn't the cap here, it's only 1.1 bar, like 15 psi or something, it would start spraying, right? So that's something else. Like, is it really overheating, or is it just my gauges? All right, let me know, y'all. And here's one last look at what I mean when I'm talking about the different temperatures. This is the bottom radiator hose, the outlet of the radiator. So up until maybe 2 weeks ago, when it started getting up above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, or I don't know what that would be, 3 or 4 Celsius, 5 or 6, that started to climb, especially when I'm just sitting at idle. So I'm like, hey, I've got a problem, I'm getting hot. And it was climbing up to 160, which is where, if this reaches 160, then that means that this one is buried at the very edge, not quite past it, but it's at the very edge, and I get very concerned. Now when I'm driving, typically, this is where the temperature gauge will sit, right there, just about. So when the car's warmed up, it kind of does this thing. When I'm warming up, it'll climb, a little bit to the end, it'll peg past hot, and then it'll sort of settle right there. I'm not really sure what that means. It's a 40 or 50-year-old sensor. How much can I trust it? So that's why I have this on the outlet, and I noticed, of course, 160 on the outlet doesn't mean that the engine's overheating, but that's typically not even past 100 degrees. So this doesn't read past 100 degrees. It tells me my radiator's doing a fine job at cooling it, which is usually how it is around the highway when I'm at high speeds. So of course wind velocity is helping cool the car down. But when I'm just at a stop, I'm watching this gauge climb and I'm watching that gauge hit the very end. It's concerning me. Well, I've got the new thermostat in, it's cut, it's in place, tightened. I'm going to top off the coolant, feed the cats, and then try it when I go back out tonight. Even though it'll be a little cooler outside, it'll still give me an idea how this gauge acts and how that one acts. I can try. I'm also leaning towards that fan, just not working fast enough. Alright, so with the thermostat removed, I am getting pretty steady temperatures on this gauge here, right in the middle. That's why I like it. That's after a little bit of high-spirited driving against another vintage Beetle. And then over here, it's sitting right around 120 on the outlet of the radiator. Like I said, I'm not used to seeing that above 100, because usually it stays pretty cool. So we'll see how this goes tomorrow when the sun's up and the weather's warm. So in the meantime, I've noticed that you can't really dump the clutch in these old carbureted cars. You rev it up, and then as soon as, well, at least I should say with the Weber, it kind of chokes out because that load is so strong, and it just drops the RPM instead of propelling you forward. So you kind of have to ride the clutch until you finally grab it completely, and then you can let off, and then by that time it's time to shift. So anyways, I'll work out the race car kinks later. Right now I'm just happy that I'm not overheating constantly. Thank you for watching. Have a good night, everybody.